In Screwed News, last night we told you about the potentially disturbing connection between Johnson & Johnson's branded baby powder and ovarian cancer. Well, it turns out that baby powder isn't the only Johnson & Johnson product under fire for dangerous side effects. Invokana, a blood sugar drug made by Johnson & Johnson's subdivision, Janssen Pharmaceuticals. It's been connected to cardiovascular problems and kidney failure. And now a recent court case in Minnesota is threatening to blow the whole thing wide open, I hope. With me now for more on this is consumer attorney Travis Lepasier. Travis, welcome. I know you've been at this case now for a couple of years. Tell us what exactly Invokana is, and what's it used to treat, and what are the problems that we're finding with this drug?
Sure, Pap. Well, Invokana is a medication that's in a new class of diabetes treatments called SGLT2 inhibitors. And the drugs are prescribed to type 2 diabetes patients with the intent of lowering their blood sugar. And the drugs do that by preventing the patient from metabolizing the sugar that they consume, and instead the person will excrete the unmetabolized sugar through their urine, and it passes through their system without ever being used as energy. As you said, Johnson & Johnson and Janssen are the manufacturer and the seller of this drug, and here in the U.S., the drug has been absolutely a huge boom for these companies, to the tune of $1 billion in annual sales in 2015 alone.
Okay. As you started looking at this case, first of all, the things that you found was a cardiac arrest, a heart failure, kidney failure, ketoacidosis, which also can be fatal. But Travis, isn't this another situation where the FDA simply takes whatever the industry said, whatever the drug manufacturer says, they take their word for it? People think the FDA does their individual studies. The FDA does no studies. Xarelto, for example, I know you're one of the lawyers involved with that. On Xarelto, now we're finding that the Duke studies that the FDA used might have been completely way out of kilter. It might have been on purpose. And so here, this is another one that got by. It's a drug that nobody needs because there are plenty of drugs that do the same thing. How does this happen time after time, Travis?
Well, I think it's even worse than just taking the company's word for it. Here, especially with the cardiovascular issues, the FDA was aware that there was an increase, or there's indications of increased risk of stroke and heart attack with Invokana, yet they still passed it through the advisory committee by an 8-7 vote. So it just got through by 1 vote. And they were aware that the cardiovascular events were a problem. So they told Janssen to go back and complete their trials. And in effect, the FDA's rubber stamped using consumers as guinea pigs for Janssen while they complete their trial and determine whether or not heart attacks and strokes are a concern for Invokana. And the initial trial numbers indicate that they are a problem.
Travis, do you find in this practice that you do you find that most people believe, they honestly have a real belief, that the FDA actually studies these drugs? Don't you? You know that's not accurate. I know that's not accurate, but most people actually believe that the FDA has done studies on this themselves. Nothing's further from the truth, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the common person on the street expects the FDA to rigorously vet these drugs when they're coming up for approval, and the reality is they don't do that at all. It's much more of a rubber stamp, and these drugs are put on the market, and the American people are used as guinea pigs to determine whether or not they're actually safe.
And it all seems to flow from the top. For example, this committee that you talked about. The committee is political, isn't it? I mean, this committee that reviews this is totally political. There are plants that come directly from the pharmaceutical industry. Sometimes they come directly from the company. Nobody asks questions about them being planted on this committee. And it's just a matter of following the money, isn't it?
Absolutely. All you have to do is look at Obama's recent nomination to head the FDA. That person has been taking money from Big Pharma for years now, and he's now being nominated to lead the FDA by the president of our country. So it's a pretty scary situation.
And Travis, this administration knows that. I mean, it's very clear that you had Bernie Sanders out there on the stump saying that this guy is an abomination, and he is. But nevertheless, Obama appoints him anyway because the political impact that comes from the pharmaceutical industry is so strong. But with this Invokana product, this is a dangerous product. The company, making it, Janssen, is making it. They call it their cash cow. It's making so much money, they call it their cash cow. People are being hospitalized, they're dying of heart attack, they're dying of kidney failure, and the FDA sits there fat, dumb, and happy. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And, you know, I think it's really important that people understand that one of the reasons this drug is so successful is because Janssen and Johnson & Johnson are out there greasing the doctors, right? So the doctors are the ones prescribing these drugs to the patients, and we know that they have spent almost $30 million since the drug has been on the market, you know, paying doctors in various forms to be selling these drugs.
Explain that. People can't even fathom that a doctor is being paid to prescribe medicine. Explain how that works.
Sure. Well, it comes in many forms. There is often compensation for menial tasks, you know, in the form of just a check to the doctor for performing a speech somewhere at a seminar. There's often prestigious, you know, seminar speaking spots that they are offered. There's vacations, there's fancy dinners. There's all kinds of perks and benefits, as well as just cash that these doctors are given in an effort to get them to prescribe the drug that the manufacturers want them to prescribe.
So basically, it's pay to play. Doctors know they have their hand out. Give me money and I will prescribe your new cash cow. Now, the doctor at the same time, and tell me if I'm wrong, the doctor at the same time has many other alternatives that have been on the market for a long time. They don't have to take chances. There's nothing they have to do to take a chance here, but they take the chance anyway to make money. It's the old greed thing at work. We never believed that our doctor would do that, but they're doing it every day, aren't they?
Yeah, it appears so. You know, here it seems like greed is trumping safety. It's a really sad state of affairs. But you know, when it comes to Invokana and many prescription drugs that you see that cause injuries, that's typically what you're seeing.
Approximately how many cases have been filed, in less than a minute talk about this, about how many cases have been filed in this case, Travis?
There's a couple handful of cases that have been filed around the country. There's both state court and federal court litigation that's going on. And, you know, we're really getting ramped up for discovery against these defendants. These are corporate behemoths, and it's going to take a lot to take them down on this drug. But we feel confident that at the end of the day, this drug is causing these injuries, ketoacidosis, kidney failure, and the heart attack and stroke as well. So we think that you know, the litigation will go well. It's very early on in the process, but it will go well.
Yeah. Travis, thank you for joining us. Keep up the work on this case. If you don't do it, obviously nobody else is going to take care of this problem.